Hello, I'm Arizu Gaming, and welcome to another episode of Sandbox Showcase, a series where I talk about problems in Oxygen Not Included and how you can solve them easily and efficiently. So today, I want to talk about magma volcanoes, or specifically the Minor Volcano. So these volcanoes, unlike a lot of them in Oxygen Not Included, actually produce magma. The Minor Volcano will produce usually around about 150 kilograms per second of 1700-ish degree magma, for somewhere between 60 and 90 seconds. So this is roughly about 10 tons of magma in less than 2 minutes. So unlike the metal volcanoes where they erupt a small amount over a prolonged period of time, you just get inundated with a very large volume of magma very quickly. And the regular volcano produces exactly twice as much on average as the minor volcano. But we're going to talk about the minor volcano today because it's a little bit smaller and a little bit more manageable and a little bit more common. You'll frequently find these spawned in certain asteroids, especially on spaced out, just by default. They're a bit more common. So this video is going to focus on taming a minor volcano in such a way that you can get the 1700 degree magma to turn into relatively cool igneous rock relatively quickly. And the context for this is feeding hatches, or specifically feeding stone hatches. So yeah, here we go. Let's spawn in a stone hatch. So these guys eat rock and they turn it into coal, which you can use to power your base, and then you can eat the hatches and sustain your duplicants off of the meat. If you have a lot of minor volcanoes and you can tame them quickly, it can be quite viable to just have a few hatch ranches that are eating the igneous rock coming from the volcanoes and sustainably producing coal and meat that way. There are somewhat more efficient ways of getting food and fuel for your power plants, but it's something you can take from an early game hatch ranch and transition it into a late game sustainable power source / food source. So that's why I want to talk about it here. We did this on our Rime Revenge run. We had over 400 stone hatches, but we didn't quite manage to tame any of the minor volcanoes, so we ended up running out of rock on the asteroid, and that happened fairly quickly because the asteroid did not have a huge amount of rock to start off with. So if you're trying to feed hatches late game, you are going to want to be taming volcanoes to come up with the rock. So this is the context of this video. We're going to try and get the magma from this minor volcano to turn into cool igneous rock as soon as possible. And this is challenging for a few reasons. One, igneous rock comes out very hot as magma at 1700 degrees C. You're going to need to cool it down by about 1700 degrees C. Two, magma has a specific heat capacity of 1, which is higher than most metals. So there's a relatively large amount of heat energy in this super hot material. So there's a lot of energy that you're going to need to bleed out by various means. And thirdly, once the magma has turned into igneous rock is a notoriously bad thermal conductor. If we just have a look here, if I could spell igneous right, that would help. So igneous rock has a thermal conductivity of 2, which is not very high at all compared to metals that come out of metal volcanoes. If we compare this to the sulfur that comes out of the sulfur geyser, which is also a challenge to actually cool down properly. I mean, the sulfur has a thermal conductivity of 0.2, so it's much worse. But crucially, it has much less heat energy coming out of the sulfur geyser than this magma does. So we're going to be pulling a lot of tricks out of our hat to try and cool down this igneous rock properly and get rid of all that heat, using similar principles to the sulfur geyser tamer that we talked about previously on Sandbox Showcase. So what we're going to do, to summarize it, is we're going to stick this volcano in a steam turbine room. We're going to use insulated igneous rock tiles for this. So we're just going to put 5 here, another 5 here, another 5 here. And we're going to have 3 steam turbines over here. And that's what's going to run everything. So we'll just seal this up here. I'll get rid of the hatch. Here we go. Goodbye, hatch. So I'm just going to put down the steam turbines to illustrate what's going on. You can make these with lead. Any refined metal will do. These are going to be actively cooled, so they're not going to get super hot. And in fact, the room that has the steam turbines is going to be the room that we're sending the igneous rock into for the final cooling, because we're putting a cooling loop in here anyways, we might as well. These generate relatively little heat compared to the incomer heat from the hot igneous rock. So, how are we actually going to condense the magma first of all? Because this is where I've tripped up a lot previously trying to design a magma volcano tamer. There are designs going around where you use a robo miner to break up the tiles of igneous rock that form from magma condensing. But this wastes 50% of the rock mass, which is really not what you want for handling hatch ranches. It's okay if you're just trying to use the heat energy, but even then you're removing half the heat energy. But if you're trying to feed hatches, you want all of the material out. So we're definitely not going to be using any robo miners. What we're going to do is we're going to try and condense the magma into debris, igneous rock debris, straight away. And I want to show you a way that I think is really good at turning the magma into debris immediately. So I'm going to assume that you have access to the oil biome and a little bit of steel to build all of this with, because this steam room is going to be fluctuating between 135C and 275C. So if you don't have steel, it's probably not going to be good enough. So we're just going to make some steel metal tiles here. So they're going to go either side of the volcano. And then we're going to add a liquid here that's going to act as a thermal conductivity buffer. So what on earth are we going to pick as a liquid that isn't just going to immediately turn into sour gas or something under 1700 degrees C magma? Well, the answer may surprise you. We're actually going to use liquid uranium. So this material is kind of wild in that the melting temperature of uranium is 135 C-ish, and it turns into a gas at 4135 C-ish. So you've got about 4000 degrees of temperature range to play with, and it's super useful in that regard, having such a wide range, and it's also not really realistic. Uranium actually melts at about 1135 C, but the devs left a digit off. Look, let me show you. So if we go to uranium ore, I've wanted to talk about this for ages. So this uranium ore melts at 133 C into liquid uranium. But you'll notice something interesting. If we go to enriched uranium, that melts at around 860 C, which is a more realistic temperature. So yeah, suffice it to say, the liquid uranium is an excellent buffer for turning magma into igneous rock, because it's going to stay a liquid the whole time, from the hottest temperature of the magma to the coldest temperature of the igneous rock in this room. And it's important for us to have a liquid here, because liquids to liquids interfaces get a 625 times multiplier to thermal conductivity. So that's what we're going to use to flash cool the magma. That magma is going to immediately cool down from about 1700 C to about 1300 C as soon as it erupts from the minor volcano. And this will work for a regular volcano as well. The only wrinkle of that is there's twice as much heat energy coming out of the regular volcano. So you're going to need twice as much heat capacity in this room to stop the steam from overheating. Because when this flash cools, that heat is immediately going to go into liquid uranium, which is immediately going to go into these metal tiles and the rest of the gases and liquids in this chamber. So you're going to get a very sudden heat spike, and with a regular volcano, that heat spike might take the steam over the temperature you want it to be. So we're going to put the liquid uranium here, and then what we're going to do is we're going to put crude oil over here, because what we're going to do is we're going to have some Thermo Aquatuners that are going to cool down these steam turbines and keep them at a nice cool temperature. But what we're going to do is we're going to take roughly the maximum amount of crude oil we can fit in this space, and I'm just going to set this to 135 C as well. So we're going to pour that in here like this, and this is where we're going to have our Thermo Aquatuners. So when the rock is circulating around the room in this zone, it's going to be below 500 C. It's going to cool down below 500 C pretty quickly, and this isn't going to get above 300 C realistically. If it starts turning yellow, that's a sign that you've not got enough heat buffer steam in this room, and you need to add more steam. So something to know about the volcano is it will overpressurize at about 450 kilograms per tile of pressure. So we're going to add 400 kilograms per tile of steam. This is a lot of steam. I recommend that you get this from actually boiling the volcano output, for boiling water with the regular volcano output. That's what I recommend. I wouldn't recommend boiling polluted water because you're going to end up with polluted oxygen in your steam room, and that's going to be annoying. So we're going to put 400 kilograms per tile of steam in here. And this is important because all of the steam mass is going to help act as a heat buffer. It's going to absorb all the thermal energy from the sudden eruption of magma and keep at a relatively low temperature, so we can keep harvesting this steam heat for ages without going too high above the 200 degrees highest efficiency temperature for these turbines. So that kind of summarizes what's going on with the materials in this room. Now, what I like to do for getting into this room is I'll put some ladders in here. It doesn't really matter what these are. You can make these out of igneous rock. They're not going to melt. So I put two ladders there. And then what I would do is I put some insulated tile here, 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 and here. And then I would actually put in a few blobs of naphtha. So I like naphtha because it A, has a good temperature range, and B, it's quite viscous. So you can get a large amount on a tile and have confidence that it's not going to be displaced by any gas shenanigans. So again, I'm just going to set it to 135 here. We'll put a blob here, we'll put a blob here. And then what that means is, combined with some tiles here, just for surrounding the steam turbines, if you need to get back into this room, you could just deconstruct this tile and wander through here with your duplicant in an Atmo suit, obviously, and then seal it back up again without any issues, because this will stay as a vacuum tile because of these tiles here and because of these naphtha blobs here. So that's what I'd recommend for sealing off this room and making sure it stays heat sealed. So the next thing to do is put in the actual cooling loop, I think. So let's put in the Thermo Aquatuners. You're going to want to make these out of steel so that they conduct as much heat as quickly as possible. The overheat temperature is also important because this room is going to be getting up to about 200-ish C. But you do just want to make sure these conduct their heat into the oil as soon as possible. Gold amalgam ones can go up to 175 without overheating, but the conductivity is a lot worse. So I would just straight up recommend using steel for these. So I'll put one here. I'll put one here. And I'm going to flip them like this. And what I'm going to do, just for the purposes of what we're doing here, is I'm just going to put a little polluted water source over here. So let's just put a dev pump liquid. I actually remembered to activate the dev command. That's good. So we'll put some liquid. Oh, where is it? Yeah, we'll just put some polluted water in here. And then what we're going to do is, I'm just going to use insulated pipe for all of this. I'm going to take it out here, put a bridge here, and then make sure that's bridging onto this whole loop, so that we're not overfilling the polluted water loop. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to put a liquid pipe thermosensor on this, and you don't necessarily have to make this out of steel. As long as you don't make it out of lead, you'll be fine. So we'll just use aluminium for this. That's fine. So we'll put a liquid thermosensor there. We'll put some automation wire. Again, don't make any of this stuff lead in here. It's not worth it. And then we're going to do something similar over here. We're just going to put our favorite thermosensor over here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take this polluted water out. We're going to hook it over here, and that's going to go into the Thermo Aquatuner. If the liquid is above, let me just see. So we set this to above 10C, or whatever the target temperature of the room is. I'm going to try and make sure this room is as cold as possible, just to build up heat capacity for when the steam turbines and the hot rock starts coming in. So I'm going to set this to above 10 degrees C, and then this one's going to follow. We're going to set this to above -5C. Now, you can technically do this with one Thermo Aquatuner, but I'm going to use two because this will help all the rock cool down much faster, and this will let us get the rock from the eruption as quickly as possible, which is the purpose of this build. And then this room will be at a lower temperature for a while until this erupts again, and there'll have plenty of time to build up extra heat capacity for the eruption. That's why we're going to do it like this. So then I'm just going to send that pipe up here. We're then going to stick a liquid bridge on here. You can make this all out of igneous rock. And then the output of the Thermo Aquatuner is going to come down here. And the reason I'm doing that is because we want to make sure this loop prioritizes cooled liquid over recirculating liquid. So because this pipe starts here, it will prioritize the Thermo Aquatuner over the liquid bridge. That's why we're doing this. So then we're just going to come down here. We need to go underneath the neutronium here. So that's just going to come back around here. And then we're going to bridge over this. Just bring that pipe back up here. And then we're going to send this back down here. And we're going to do the same thing with the liquid bridge here. So that's just going to bypass that. We're going to start the pipe here. And then we're going to come down here. And then this pipe is going to run underneath this one. So, you know what? I don't think we actually need to do it that way. I think we can do it going... We can do it going up this way instead. I'm going to freestyle it a little bit. So we're going to send the coolant polluted water up here once it's cooled down. And then we're going to start running it past these steam turbines. Now, the water is going to come out of these steam turbines at 95C. And because we're actively cooling this, we don't want the 95C water in here. We're trying to keep this room temperature as cold as possible for cooling the rock. Because the rock, after it's cooled in this area to steam temperature, it's going to cool in this area to room temperature. So I'm going to insulate these pipes. We're going to send them down here. And then I'm going to put 2 liquid vents in. So I'm going to put one in over here. Yeah, I'll put one over here over this Thermo Aquatuner, and one over here over this Thermo Aquatuner. And then what I'm going to do, you could use regular pipe for this bit because it's insulated tile. I'm going to fork it, so once all the steam turbine output is merged, half of it will go into this vent, and then half of it will go into this vent. So this pipe will be insulated. I'm using igneous rock for this. If you have ceramic, use it. It's a better insulator. But I'm just going to show how the build works with igneous rock. There's a little bit less efficiency because there's more thermal conductivity going on with the liquids, but it's good enough generally. So we're going to dump those liquids over there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have some radiant pipe over here. And it's very important that we're conducting as much heat away from the steam turbines and the rock that's being cooled in this room as possible. So ideally you want to use aluminium pipes for this. If you don't have that, cobalt is pretty good as well. Iron and steel are also pretty good. But we're going to use aluminium. So we want to run aluminium radiant pipes all the way across this. And I'm going to hook this up in a minute. But what we're going to do as well to ensure there's plenty of conductivity in this room is we're going to have a relatively thin layer of oil here. So around 5 kilograms per tile will do. And then on top of that, we're going to have 5 kilograms per tile of petroleum. So you don't really need a huge amount, but you just want to have a little bit of liquid covering the bottom 2 tiles of the steam turbines. Because A, the liquid is a lot more conductive than whatever gas you'd have in here. And B, it's really going to help conduct heat away from the igneous rock compared to having just a gas in here. But you obviously don't want so much liquid in here that it floods these steam turbines. So definitely keep it below 100 kilograms per tile. Whereas these Thermo Aquatuners won't flood. So you want to cover these with as much oil as possible to maximize the heat capacity of the room. So that's what we're going to do here. And also, on the note of thermal conductivity, we're going to put some temperature plates in here to really help spread out the heat. If you're in an oil biome, I would just recommend getting a load of diamond from the oil biome and using that. It's very conductive, and that's what you're looking for. So we're going to put those here. We do not want them to interface with the insulated tiles. So just these tiles, really. The inner ones. So that will do. And we'll do something similar up here with these steam turbines. Because we're really just trying to maximize conductivity with this whole setup. So going back to the pipe overlay. So now we're going to connect up these cooling loops. And what we're going to do here is we want the loop to start here and end back over here. So I'm going to send this pipe up here, where I'm going to bridge it over into this room. Never do a bridge going both sides of insulated tile. You always want it to just be one side or the other, otherwise it's going to leak heat between the two rooms. So that's going to go there, and then we're just going to run it past all of this. We're going to run it through the liquid layers first, again to maximize the conductivity, and that can just go like that. And then we'll just connect these up like this. And then that coolant pipe will come out the outside. That's all fine. So once we've got the pipe coming out here, again, we'll go back to insulated pipe for this. We'll come back down here, and then we're just going to run this through here. And what I want to do is I want to put a bridge here. Yeah, I want to put a bridge here and then link that pipe up this way. So that's going to, that's going to prioritize recirculating the loop over filling it with more polluted water. And this could be any polluted water source. I'm using polluted water because it has the heat capacity of regular water, but a slightly higher temperature range. You can use regular water for this, but I'm doing it because we can get this loop slightly lower. It can go down to minus 20 C. If this Aquatuner's on, it can go down to minus 19 C with this set to minus 5 C. So that's why I'm using polluted water. So we'll connect it up like that, and that's basically the cooling loop. So that should fill with polluted water immediately. And then what we're going to do with this room as well. So again, for access into this room, what I'd recommend is doing some naphtha shenanigans again. This is my favorite way of accessing these rooms. So I'm going to put these tiles here so that when we spawn the naphtha in, so let's put this like this. You could just deliver this with a bottle emptier or with pedestals, with a move to command. Lots of ways of moving around liquids now. So we're going to put about 30 kilograms per tile on these tiles. And the reason I put this tile here is so that we can, when we remove this tile to gain access to this room, it will stay a vacuum in here and make sure none of the heat leaks out. So that's why we're doing that. So then what we're going to do is we're going to seal this up at the top. And what we're going to do as well is we're going to put some metal tiles in here to further increase the conductivity of the room. And you'll see why we will do this in a minute when I get to the conveyor overlay. So you want to use aluminium for this. This room isn't going to get so hot to melt the aluminium. It has the highest thermal conductivity. So we're going to put those along like this. And what I actually want to do is I'm going to come back here, and instead of running the pipe past this with a bridge, what we're going to do is we're going to run it up here, and we're going to run it through the metal tiles as well. Yeah, so we'll disconnect this. This can go over here again. I can go over here. And then, yeah, that loop can run all the way through those metal tiles as well. And then in terms of gas, you can just fill this room with hydrogen as the gas. It's fairly conductive, has fairly good heat capacity. So we'll just fill this with, say, 20 kilograms per tile of hydrogen, just from a high pressure gas vent that you could just put, like, say, in a tile over here or something, and then remove it afterwards. So that's what that room is going to look like. And then we're going to set up the actual conveyor rail. But there's a few other things I want to do first. So let's just finish off the automation. There's not a huge amount of automation in this build, but what we are going to do is we're going to put a thermo sensor over here. We'll make this out of metal that won't melt, so aluminium should be fine, whatever. No magma is going to get up here because it's all going to be immediately converting into igneous rock debris. So we'll take this thermo sensor here, and I'm going to send it around here, up here. We're just going to connect it to these 3 steam turbines, and we're going to set this thermo sensor to above 135°C. We do not want these steam turbines to cool down this room if it's below 135°C, because we don't want this to freeze. So that's going to be the minimum temperature of the room, and the maximum temperature will be 275. That's what we're aiming for. So then the next thing to do is actually the conveyor rails. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put the auto sweeper. This needs to be made out of steel. I'm going to put this directly over the volcano, more or less directly over the volcano. We're going to stick this here. And then that is going to load a steel conveyor loader that is going to go here. Yeah, we'll put that there. And then we're going to start the conveyor rails. So we're going to set this to everything. We mainly wanted to pick up the igneous rock from here once it's condensed. In terms of conveyor rails, you can build these out of anything. It isn't going to immediately melt. What I would say is any conveyor rails in this sort of region should be made out of steel because the magma is hot. There's a lot of conductivity going on in this area. Other metals will melt in this area. So I just recommend using steel for all of these just to be safe. You're probably going to have a little bit of steel for building at this stage anyways. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use, say, copper ore for this conveyor rail here. And we're just going to immediately send it this way. And then we're just going to run it immediately past the oil. We're going to run it through the metal tiles. We're going to connect to the steel rail. And then we're just going to send it back through here. So we're going to run it through all the liquid first to get all of the as much initial heat out of the igneous rock as possible. And then we're going to send it over here. And then what we're going to do over here is we're going to have... Let me think about this, because I've got a blueprint for this, but I don't think I did it very well in the blueprint. So we're going to just adjust it very slightly. So I'm going to put the conveyor shut off here. We're going to make this... You can make this out of anything. Conveyor shutoffs don't overheat, and it's kind of odd that they don't because all the other shutoffs do. I'm going to make it out of... I'm going to make it out of copper, I guess. So that's going to go here, and then what we're going to do is we're going to have this conveyor rail go up to that, and we're going to run it through a conveyor rail thermosensor. I'm going to need to move this automation wire a little bit, don't mind me. So that can just go here, and then this will connect up to this. And what we're going to do is we're going to set this conveyor rail thermosensor to less than 200 degrees. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to get the igneous rock below 200 degrees in this room. The ideal steam temperature that we want in this room is 200 degrees. So the heat from the volcano and the heat from the Thermo Aquatuners is going to help with this. So then what we're going to do is any rock that isn't at that temperature is going to go over here. So I'm just going to put a bridge here. That's going to come down here, and then I'm going to put a bridge immediately after it as well. So I think what I'm going to do is literally just this. There is a single tile where we're not running material through it. That's fine. So then because that bridge is after the loader, this is going to prioritize recirculating the material over loading fresh material. And then what we're going to do is if the material is cool enough, we're going to send it up here, and then we're going to put another bridge on here. And then that's going to bypass this area, and it's going to run out the top. So that's going to go over here through this insulated tile. And then we're going to start running it in this room. So what I'm going to do is... Let's see. What am I going to do? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a bridge here. And then that material is going to start coming out here. And we're going to run it through the crude oil first, and then we'll run it through the petroleum. So it's going to come out this way. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to run it up here, and I'm going to run it through the aluminium. It's all fine. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put another conveyor rail thermosensor here and another conveyor shutoff. These could be made out of lead. This room isn't going to get too hot. And then what I'm going to do is set this to below 30 degrees, I believe. Yeah. I'm going to set this to below 30 degrees, or whatever the target temperature for your rock is. I'm going to set it to room temperature. And again, we're going to automate that. So that's going to connect up like that. So if it is at the target temperature, it's going to come out over here, and this is just where we're going to dump all the cool rock when we're done with it. If it's not at that temperature, what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to bridge it over here. So we'll just put another bridge here, and then what I'll do is I'll put another bridge here just to be safe. Conveyor rails can get a little funny if you don't have if you're trying to do the pipe priority logic from liquid pipes. If you don't have the exits right next to each other, sometimes the material can get confused, which is why we're going to use this extra bridge here. And then that's going to connect on there. And again, that's going to prioritize recirculating the relatively colder material in here compared to the hotter material coming from the steam chamber. So this should recirculate everything properly, and then that just connects up in the middle. So that is the conveyor overlay for this. So what else do we actually have left to do on this build? Well, this volcano is currently erupting, so it's going to start erupting before we've filled this cooling loop. But that's actually fine, because it's going to take some time for the igneous rock to cool down this room anyways. What I am going to do is I'm going to put some conductive wires in here. Now, what I would suggest, this build, when it's running, is going to both produce and generate over 2 kilowatts of power. So you can build heavy wire joint plates into these rooms, but what I'm going to do instead is I'm just going to lead off a few different conductive wires, and we're going to hook it up with some transformers. You know what? This doesn't have to be neat. This doesn't have to be neat for this video. It's not about the wiring. I just want to show that it works. And we're going to put a dev generator here for now. My brain is turning to mush. There we go. Right. So that should be enough to handle the power from all of this. So I believe everything is connected. And then what else is left to do? I think that's it. So I'm going to save it just in case I screw this up. It's very possible. So let's save it as Minor Volcano Mark 1. There we go. And again, just to reiterate, this room should cool itself down to 135°C between eruptions. So obviously you're going to want to boil all the water into steam in advance and get the oil in here and get everything up to temperature. Okay, and here we are. The volcano is about to actually do a full eruption. So we'll get to see how much a full minor volcano eruption heats up this 135°C steam at about 400 kilograms per tire pressure. We've got the maximum amount of crude oil we can have in here as well, about 800 kilograms per tile here. And we'll see how much heat this all absorbs immediately as soon as this volcano actually erupts. Okay, so here we have the volcano. It's finally erupting. As you can see, the steam temperature has started at 135 degrees-ish, which is the minimum temperature. And we're going to let this volcano erupt. You can see the magma is immediately condensing into igneous rock and being loaded into the conveyor loader. That is cooling down to about 1,340 degrees immediately in the liquid uranium. You can't even see the magma spawn. If we go to the liquid overlay, you can see the magma never really spawns. It displaces the liquid uranium and it flows back to fill the gap. So that rock comes onto the conveyor at about 1300°C, and then enters the oil and immediately starts cooling down very quickly because of the conductivity of the oil compared to the steam. And then it's going to get in here at about 600°C-ish. It's going to leave at about 300°C. It's going to come up here and it's going to exit the oil on both sides at about 250°C. Then it's going to wrap around up here. You can see some of this rock is already below the target temperature of 200 degrees in here, which means that is actually being sent over to the new steam turbine cooling area. So that rock is going to come in here. The pellucid water is keeping the steam turbines nice and cool as they're operating, going through both Thermo Aquatuners. Only this one is active at the moment because there's not too much heat going into these. So if we go back to the shipping overlay, see that little bit of rock is coming through. It is around yeah, it's around -5 now. So that is going to immediately exit up here, nice and cold and ready for use. So this volcano has stopped erupting now. The steam is up to about 200 degrees C, which is the target temperature for this build. You can see the steam turbines are nearly running at maximum power, so they're generating about 700 watts each. Because this Thermo Aquatuner is not, this Thermo Aquatuner is active, this one isn't at the moment. This is generating net positive power. When these two Thermo Aquatuners are running simultaneously, and these steam turbines are running at max power with the 200 degrees steam, this room will be roughly even on power balance. So you're going to have some periods where these steam turbines are running and the Thermo Aquatuners aren't running. You're going to have some periods where the Thermo Aquatuners are running and the steam turbines are running relatively low. But you can see we've had that full eruption. The hot igneous rock is still in here, but you can see it is being cleared by these conveyor rails fairly quickly. As the room heats up under the continuous load from the hot rock, you'll see both of these Aquatuners will start to come on a bit more. Got about 3 kilograms of igneous rock out here at the moment, but we are going to dump more over here. You'll see this rock is just about to get to the sensor. That rock is around 10 degrees at the moment, so that is going to get dumped out here as well. We have a little bit of gas out here, but not too much gas for heat transfer. I meant for this to be a vacuum, but it didn't quite end up as a vacuum. And now what we're going to do, so you see this room is heating up. Both of these Thermo Aquatuners are now running. As more and more of this hot rock gets loaded onto the loader, more and more of this heat will be dispersed into the room. You can see this room is now above 200 degrees C, so some of the heat is being wasted. But this is power positive because 3 850 watt steam turbines is 2,550 watts, and the Thermo Aquatuners are 1,200 watts each, and that leaves 150 watts spare for the loader and the auto sweeper, which aren't running all the time. So this is overall power positive in this configuration. Some of the heat is being wasted, but as stated previously, the primary goal of this setup is to get the igneous rock out and cold as fast as possible. So now you can see this igneous rock is circulating around this room for a bit longer. The room is above 200 C, so this rock isn't able to cool down below 200 C, and it's going to keep circulating for a while. But these steam turbines are going to keep running, and they will eventually get the steam temperature below 200 C, at which case more rock will come out, and the rock will start to go in here to get cooled again. The Aquatuners are able to cool the water down with a power of about 1.17 MDTU per second. And the steam turbines, as you can see at the moment, are generating about 95 kDTU per second each. So the overall heat flux is about 0.9 MDTU of cooling in this room. So this room is going to cool quickly. These will stop running once this room is cooled again, and then once these stop running, the temperature in this room will rapidly drop because of the steam turbines and the 95 degree water being dumped out of them. This water is staying around 95 C. There's a little bit of heat conductivity going on here because of the igneous rock pipe, but igneous rock is definitely good enough for this. And then if we speed this up, you'll eventually see that this room will cool down. It does take a while to handle the rock. This is why I'm saying that this build is primarily for minor volcanoes and not for regular volcanoes. With a regular volcano, the temperature of this room will increase from around 135 C to around 275 C. So the steel could still just about handle the heat of the room, but you're going to have a lot more wasted power because these will generate the same amount of power, they'll just generate more heat, and it will take longer for all of the heat to be cooled off, as it were. And I'm not confident that this build would remove all of the heat from a regular volcano's eruption before the next eruption happens. However, I am confident that that heat will all be bled off before the next minor volcano eruption. But it is going to take a while to cool all of this rock off, so I will come back in a few minutes when we've dumped a little bit more of this. One thing to note as well is the igneous rock in the uranium is slowly leaching its heat into the environment as debris. So although this first lot of rock is going to take a long time to actually get cooled down to the point where it can enter this room and get fully cooled down, once this rock mass starts to decrease, and once the temperature of this rock mass starts to decrease, the whole thing speeds up quite a lot. So after you get your first lot of rock coming through this room, the second, third, and final lots, etc., will come through a lot faster. So you can see it's taken a little while, but now the rock is finally starting to get to around about the target 200 degrees temperature on the conveyor. The majority of the rock mass down here has cooled down by about another 100 degrees. And we're going to start seeing more rock moving into this room. This room is again kept at the target temperature of around -5 degrees at the moment. And then we'll start to see some of the rock flip over onto this bridge here once the center trips. There you go. So you can see some of the hot rock is now being sent through. And if we look at the conveyor rail down here, you'll see that rock will immediately cool down as soon as it goes through this relatively small amount of oil here. And we're trying to keep the thermal mass in this room fairly low so that the cooling pipe can influence it well. And you can see here in a minute, we're starting to dump out the cooled igneous rock. You can see this coming out at around sort of about 20 degrees-ish. If we look at the center, the temperature is going through here. We let through that block. Now there's another hot block on this line, but the mass has decreased in the main igneous rock block here that you can see here. Sorry, I think my webcam was in the way. And the temperature is going down continuously. So once that rock block has moved over, the next block of cooled rock should take less time to arrive, followed by the next one, and the next one, and the next one, etc. And after all of that hot rock has been moved, this room will start decreasing in temperature due to the activity of the steam turbines, but it will still stay around between 135 and 200 degrees for a long while. So you will get lots of power out of this while there isn't being rock moved in the room as well, it should be said. So I'll see you when the next lot of rock goes through. Alright, we're back. It's been about a cycle and the rock temperature is yet again decreasing to about 200 degrees C on the belt. The main mass over here is down to about 825 degrees C. And we'll see how much actually gets sent through this time before it heats up again. Yeah, so now it's activating. We'll just keep an eye on this sensor here this time, because I imagine what happens is you get more or less like a full belt through, and then you get the hot material loading on again. So yeah, now you can see the temperature is going up again. So that grabbed about 700 kilograms of that rock, sending it through this room. And that's coming out more or less immediately because this room has been kept nice and cool by the Thermo Aquatuners. Hello again, we are back. As you can see, the rock is once again approaching 200 C. It's been about half a cycle this time. Time is decreasing between rock intervals. See, the steam turbines are all working away. I haven't had to put any more polluted water on this loop. Loop has been running absolutely fine. You can see the water is being split 50-50 between these two vents. This Thermo Aquatuner is doing most of the work at the moment, but that's fine because there's so much thermal mass in here. The temperature gradient between the inactive and the active Thermo Aquatuner isn't too high, so not really a big problem. Yeah, you can see more rock's been loaded into here. That is now being dumped through. So now we've got about 5 tons of material in here. So again, another 700 kilogram lot has gone through. So now we're on cycle 24. It's been about sort of a third of a cycle. The rock is back down to about 200 degrees. And yeah, you can see the rock mass here is around 650 degrees now, continually getting colder in the liquid uranium pool. And yeah, this process will just continue over roughly 700 kilogram lots Let's have a look at this mass of igneous rock here now as it's being picked away at by the auto sweeper. So it's probably going to be another 700 kilograms, I imagine. Yeah, so this time it was a little bit more because it took a bit longer because this material isn't as hot as it was before, so it's taking a little bit longer to heat up the sensor again. Now you can see the sensor is quite hot because there's some fresher rock in here. And then that's followed immediately by the cooler rock from earlier. So once you start getting down to the low amounts of rock mass, the material on this belt will be a lot less homogeneous in temperature, but that's not a problem. It just means that the loads of rock are going to come sort of more irregularly, but the overall net amount of rock that's coming through is going to increase. And as you can see, we've got about 4 tons of rock over the 5 cycles since eruption. So not a bad initial throughput, and it's going to keep getting better as we get through the rest of this. So I'll see you when all of the rock has actually been removed from this pile. I just thought I'd bring this up for a second. So now that we're getting more rock being loaded through here at once, as this last mass is getting moved into the steam turbine room, now you're going to see the second Aquatuner kicking in. And the second Aquatuner hasn't really been doing a lot so far because there's been relatively little rock actually moving into this room. But as the temperature in here starts to decrease, as this final rock mass starts to get removed, both of these Aquatuners will run more often together to keep this room cool. Because at this point, the thermal mass from the rock coming in, the heat energy from the rock coming in is higher than the heat energy produced by the steam turbines. So that's what you're going to sort of see. But again, it's not really going to kick in loads until the last lot of rock is actually moved out. So I'll see you in a minute. So now we're sort of down to the last 1.5 tons of material. You'll see this steam turbine room has ended up quite a bit hotter than it was originally. It was sort of around -5, now it's sort of around 15. It is cooling down. That's what the second Thermo Aquatuner is really for here with this build, is when you get to this final phase where you're just dumping in most of the remaining rock. You can see the temperature is being removed from the remaining lot of igneous rock quite quickly now. And the interval between these loads of rock coming on is getting shorter and shorter. But again, once it gets back below 10 degrees, that's when you're back to just the one Aquatuner running. And then there's less heat being generated in this room. The rock will cool down a bit faster again, and that will start getting loaded again. So we're kind of getting the last load of rock moved into here now. And you can see the steam turbine room. Yeah, this room is a bit hotter again. Now it's getting up to about 30 degrees. So now the last bits of rock are coming in. The heat flux is higher than these Thermo Aquatuners are handling, but they are getting it back under control. And then once the rock stops moving in, this setup will cool itself back down pretty quickly. Then these will turn off, and then all of this steam will slowly get cooled by the steam turbines back down to the target temperature of 135 degrees. Yeah, you can see now this last little bit of rock is losing the last of its mass, the last of its thermal energy, as it were. And then it's going to get loaded on. Yeah, that's all the rock. It's all been loaded, and it took about 6-7-ish cycles to load on all of the rock from that minor volcano eruption. Now what you'll notice is this volcano erupts roughly once every 18 cycles. So we've taken all of the rock out of this volcano area in about half the eruption cycle, and it's going to take a little bit more time to cool this stuff down because these steam turbine rooms are going to start getting hotter. But all the rock is now on this belt, and it's still not that hot. We still have both the Thermo Aquatuners working now. They're both working to cool these down again for the next lot of rock to come in. See, that's all being loaded now. So if we go to the actual shipping overlay, now you'll see that the rock is finally almost all being removed. And it does take a little bit longer than with the sulfur geyser tamer, just because there's so much heat energy in this rock compared to the heat energy in the sulfur geyser output. You can see this little bit here was still slightly too hot, so that's being recirculated. And now it's cooler again. So now pretty much all of the rock is out of this room. This steam is going to slowly start decreasing in temperature from 200 to 135, and then the room will be as it was before the eruption. So I will skip to that point because this room isn't going to get any hotter over here anymore. It's maxed out at about 30 degrees C. With the Minor Volcano, it might get a little bit hotter than this. It depends on the Minor Volcano. This is a fairly middle of the range Minor Volcano we've got here. Some are up more, some are up less, but have confidence that if it's a Minor Volcano, you will keep it roughly around 200 C, and it will process the rock in roughly 40% of the eruption time. So yeah, I'll see you in a minute. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention before we cut to the end is if you there is a material that's better than crude oil for this purpose if you have it, that you can get. If you've got liquid uranium and you're already using uranium for things, if you have nuclear fallout, if you have nuclear waste from your research reactor, that is actually a very good material to use as the heat sink for this setup. Because if we have a look at their properties, so if we have a look at crude oil, so crude oil has a thermal conductivity of 2 and a specific heat capacity of 1.69, but nuclear waste, so if we look this up, liquid nuclear waste, so this has a specific heat capacity of 7.44 and a thermal conductivity of 6. So it's both better at extracting the heat out of the rock, and it absorbs a lot more of the heat, so the temperature flux in the room isn't as much while the volcano erupts. Now, one thing to bear in mind, with full tiles of nuclear fallout, you are going to get a very significant amount of radiation in this room. So be careful sending people in here. You may even want to shield this with like lead tiles or plastic tiles, because if you've got like 2 full layers of liquid nuclear waste in here, it's going to produce the rads. Like, let me just show you for reference. So just put this here quickly. You can see that that produces a fairly substantial amount of radiation. It's not like an absolutely crazy amount, but it's enough that you should probably be aware of it. But if you do have it, this does retain a lot more heat than the crude oil does, like over 4 times the amount of heat, and it's more conductive with the rock, so you can clear it out of the room a lot quicker. But yeah, we don't need any of this. Yeah, as the steam temperature decreases in this room, these steam turbines will produce less heat energy, meaning the Thermo Aquatuner won't have to run as much, and the room should start to cool down a bit more rapidly. And I'm predicting it's going to get to about cycle 32 by the time the steam is back to the 135C it was before the volcano erupted. And the whole time we're getting a lot of power out of this. This isn't going to be running all of the time. We're back. So now it is cycle 33, and the steam temperature is more or less down to 135C. So soon this thermosensor is going to kick in, these steam turbines are going to stop running, and we're well in advance of the next minor volcano eruption. So overall, that hot rock was handled in about 14 cycles, and this erupts roughly every 18 cycles. So between the 3 steam turbines and the 2 Thermo Aquatuners, we were able to cool down all of that rock and the rest of the steam residual heat within the eruption time frame. So this won't work as shown for a full volcano, because that'll be twice the amount of magma, but it's very easy to actually just make this device a little bit larger, and it would be able to handle a full volcano. What you could do is you could just use 6 steam turbines instead of 3, and 4 Thermo Aquatuners instead of 2. Just double the power consumption, the power production, and just stretch out the whole sort of plumbing network and the conveyor rail network to those wider chambers, and that should work just fine. So I'm not going to do a video about a major volcano tamer, but you can just double this minor volcano tamer build and it will more or less work properly within the same time frame. So yeah, that basically sums up my thoughts on minor volcano taming. So this build will let you get the rock out of a minor volcano and cool it down well before it erupts again for the next lot of rocks. So you can see we've got the 10.5 tons from the eruption here. There's no missing rock. This does erupt for a total volume of 10.5 tons, and it's at nice room temperature. We managed to get a lot of power out of this. Now the thermo sensor is kicking in and stopping the steam turbines to make sure that the liquid uranium doesn't freeze. And yeah, very successful at immediately condensing the magma and converting that into rock that we can just use. Yeah, thanks very much for watching. If you like this video, feel free to subscribe for more Oxygen Not Included content. We like to do Sandbox Showcase quite a lot. This is a build that we didn't actually do on our previously streamed runs, but we do stream Oxygen Not Included on Twitch a lot. We're currently doing 2 runs, one with mouth breathers only on Spaced Out with Folia, and one on Badlands with a more classic style approach as well. So feel free to follow on Twitch if you want to see what I'm doing live. There is also the Discord server where we post builds and memes for Oxygen Not Included, and there are some other games that we do as well. We've just started a playthrough of Mega Aquarium, so that's going to be a lot of fun. I do like my fish, as you can probably tell. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye for now.
Whisker sends thanks to the following Twitch subscribers: Deadeye XL, Grey Area, Gusty Wind Flaps, Hiatus Seuss, Neo Deus Machina, The Max Not Binary, and Uglavisk.